Ask just about anyone who founded the Church of England, and you'll get the same answer. Henry VIII. We all know the story. A king, his desperate need for a son, and a dramatic split from the Pope in Rome. It's got political intrigue, romance, and revolution all rolled into one. It's simple, it's memorable, and it's what we were all taught in school. But what if I told you that's not the real story? Or at least, not the whole story. The tale of Henry VIII creating a new church just to get a divorce is really just the final chapter of a book that was already 1,000 years old. The true origin story is far more complex, more ancient, and way more interesting. It's a story that starts, not in a fancy Tudor palace, but in the muddy outposts of the Roman Empire and the quiet green corners of Britain where a very different kind of Christianity was already growing. So, if you think you know the story of the Church of England, stick around. We're about to pull back the curtain on the larger-than-life figure of Henry VIII and go searching for the real founders. We're talking forgotten saints, Celtic missionaries, and a version of Christianity that the Roman Empire itself tried and failed to stamp out. First, let's get the myth straight. By the 1520s, King Henry VIII had a big problem. He was a devout Catholic. The Pope had even named him Defender of the Faith for slamming the new Protestant Reformation. But his wife, Catherine of Aragon, hadn't given him a male heir, which was a huge deal for securing the Tudor dynasty. Henry's attention had shifted to the captivating Anne Boleyn, and he became convinced his marriage was cursed because Catherine had been his brother's widow. He needed an annulment from the Pope, basically a declaration that the marriage was never valid. The problem? Pope Clement VII was more or less the political prisoner of Catherine's own nephew, the Holy Roman Emperor Charles V. There was no way the Pope was going to grant that annulment. After years of getting nowhere, Henry and his advisors, particularly Thomas Cromwell and a sharp theologian named Thomas Cranmer, came up with a radical plan. If the Pope won't do what the king wants, then the Pope has no power in England. Simple as that. This was a political earthquake. For centuries, the Church in England was just one part of the massive Roman Catholic Church. Through a series of laws in the early 1530s, that all changed. The big one was the 1534 Act of Supremacy, which declared the King of England the supreme head on earth of the Church of England. It was a declaration of independence. Henry severed 1,000 years of loyalty to Rome, got his divorce, and married Anne. So yes, in a very real, legal sense, Henry VIII founded the Church of England as a national institution, separate from Rome. But he didn't found the Church in England. He inherited it, and then he hijacked it. To find its true origins, we need to go back way before the Tudors were even a thought. Our journey starts more than 1,000 years before Henry, in a land called Britannia. It was a remote province of the Roman Empire, and alongside the legions, roads, and gods, a strange new faith from the Middle East arrived: Christianity, likely carried by soldiers, merchants, and slaves. The exact details are lost to history, but by the 3rd century, the evidence is clear. Around the year 200, the theologian Tertullian wrote about places in Britain inaccessible to the Romans but subjugated to Christ. A few decades later, another writer, Origen, seemed amazed the faith had reached the literal edge of the known world. This wasn't just a rumor. The intellectual heart of Christianity knew there was a church growing on this faraway island. And it was organized. When Emperor Constantine called a big council of bishops in Arles in 314 AD, 3 bishops from Britain showed up. We even have their names: Eborius from York, Restitutus from London, and Adelphius from Lincoln or Colchester. Think about that. Nearly 300 years before Rome sent its first official missionary, a structured church existed in Britain, important enough to have a seat at the table in major international debates. This church also had its heroes, like St. Alban, Britain's first martyr. Alban was a pagan living in Roman Britain who hid a Christian priest fleeing persecution. Inspired by the priest's faith, Alban converted. When soldiers came looking, he put on the priest's cloak, was arrested in his place, and was executed when he refused to renounce his new faith. The city of St. Albans now stands where he died, a powerful symbol of a faith willing to endure. Then there are the legends, like the tale of Joseph of Arimathea, the man who buried Jesus, traveling to Britain with the Holy Grail and founding a church at Glastonbury. While there's zero historical evidence for this, it created a powerful national myth of an ancient, independent British faith, an idea that English reformers would find very useful later on. So long before England was England, a vibrant British Christian community was here. But the Roman Empire was about to crumble, and a new age of invasion threatened to put that light out for good. In 410 AD, the Roman legions packed up and left Britain to fend for itself. Chaos followed. Pagan tribes, the Angles, the Saxons, the Jutes, began raiding and then settling, pushing the native Romano-British people west into the mountains of Wales and Cornwall and across the sea to Ireland and Scotland. The Roman-style church in what would become England pretty much vanished. The new settlers brought their own gods: Woden, Thunor, the works. England went back to being pagan. But Christianity wasn't gone. In the Celtic lands, it didn't just survive, it thrived, and it transformed. Cut off from Rome, a unique form of Christianity blossomed: the Celtic Church. This Celtic Church wasn't less organized, but it was organized differently. Its heart wasn't in big cities run by powerful bishops, but in monasteries, often in stunningly remote and wild places. Think of St. Patrick, a Briton captured by pirates and enslaved in Ireland, who later returned as a missionary and helped convert the island in the 5th century. From Ireland, the faith came roaring back. In 563, a priest and prince named Columba established a monastery on the tiny, wind-swept Scottish island of Iona. Iona became a spiritual and intellectual powerhouse, a beacon in the Dark Ages. Its monks were scholars, artists, and fearless missionaries. One of them, a monk named Aidan, was invited by the king of Northumbria to set up a new monastery on the island of Lindisfarne. From this holy island, Aidan and his successors, like the beloved Saint Cuthbert, evangelized the north of England. Celtic Christianity had its own distinct flavor. It had a deep love for the natural world, a different way of calculating Easter, and its own style of monk haircut. This wasn't a separate religion, but it was a different vibe, mystical, rugged, and deeply connected to the land. These Celtic saints, Patrick, Columba, Aidan, are the true spiritual ancestors of English Christianity. They carried the torch when it almost went out, and brought it back into a pagan land. While Celtic monks were pushing south from Scotland, a new player entered the game from the other direction, sent by Pope Gregory the Great. The famous story, which the historian Bede wrote down over a century later, is that Gregory saw fair-haired boys in the Roman slave market. Told they were Angles, he supposedly quipped, "Not Angles, but angels." True or not, it shows Gregory's ambition. He wanted to bring the Anglo-Saxons into Rome's fold. In 596, he dispatched Augustine, a monk from his own monastery, to lead a mission to England. It was a terrifying prospect. Hearing stories of the savage Anglo-Saxons, Augustine's nerve failed, and he went back to Rome to beg off. Gregory said no, gave him a pep talk, and sent him back. This time, he didn't falter. In 597, the missionaries landed in Kent. This was a strategic choice. The local king, Ethelbert, was pagan, but his wife, Bertha, was a Christian princess from France. The door was already open a crack. Ethelbert cautiously agreed to meet the monks in the open air, where he figured their magic would be weaker. Augustine and his monks approached with a silver cross, an icon of Christ, and chanting. They made their pitch. The king's reply was shrewd. He basically said, "Look, your words are fair, but this is all new to me, and I can't just abandon my people's beliefs. But since you came all this way, you can stay, and we'll make sure you have what you need. You can preach and convert whoever you want." It was the break they needed. They started worshiping in Canterbury, and their devout lives began to win people over. Within a year, King Ethelbert himself was baptized. That was the tipping point. According to a triumphant letter from Pope Gregory, on Christmas Day 597, they baptized over 10,000 people. Now, that number might be a bit of papal exaggeration, but the point stands. The mission was a runaway success. Augustine became the first Archbishop of Canterbury, founding the seat of power that still leads the Church of England today. He was the great organizer. So now England had two different flavors of Christianity: the Celtic tradition in the north and the Roman tradition in the south. This led to some awkward situations. The biggest issue was the date of Easter. Because they used different calendars, the King of Northumbria could be feasting for Easter, while his queen, who followed the Roman calendar, was still in the solemn fast of Lent. Something had to give. In 664, King Oswiu of Northumbria called a meeting, a synod, at Whitby Abbey to settle things once and for all. On one side, you had Bishop Colman, arguing for the Celtic traditions of St. Columba. On the other was Wilfrid, a churchman who had been to Rome and was all in on its authority. The debate went back and forth, but the knockout blow came when Wilfrid invoked the authority of St. Peter, who Christ said held the keys to heaven. The king asked both sides if they agreed Peter held the keys. They did. And just like that, the king made his choice. "I will not contradict that gatekeeper," he declared, "for I wish to enter through that gate." With that, Whitby set the official course. Northumbria, and eventually all of England, would follow the Roman way. Now, while modern historians debate how quickly this change actually took hold everywhere, it was the moment the tide turned, and the Church in England became fully part of the European mainstream. Let's jump forward 900 years, back to Henry VIII. Henry made the political break, but it was his Archbishop of Canterbury, Thomas Cranmer, who gave the new Church of England its soul. Henry stayed pretty Catholic in his own beliefs, but Cranmer was a full-blown Protestant reformer. Under Henry's son, Edward VI, Cranmer got his chance. His masterpiece was the Book of Common Prayer. For the first time, all church services were in English, not Latin. The language was beautiful, poetic, and biblical, and it shaped the English language almost as much as Shakespeare. It gave the Church of England its unique spiritual feel, a mix of ancient Catholic structure with new Protestant ideas. Cranmer also wrote the core beliefs of the Church. If Augustine was the organizer, Cranmer was the theological architect who gave the Church its voice. So, who really founded the Church of England? There's no single answer. To say it was just Henry VIII is to miss the best parts of the story. Its foundations were laid by unknown Roman Christians and martyrs like St. Alban. The faith was kept alive and carried back from the brink by Celtic saints like Patrick, Columba, and Aidan. It was given its lasting structure by the Roman monk Augustine and unified at the Synod of Whitby. Finally, it was given its defining voice and theology by the reformer Thomas Cranmer. The Church of England wasn't founded in a single moment. It grew. It evolved over 1,000 years, shaped by saints and kings, missionaries and martyrs. It's a rich tapestry of Roman order, Celtic spirit, and Reformation fire. Henry VIII didn't create it. He just cut the last thread connecting it to Rome, revealing a church that was already, deep in its bones, English. If you enjoyed digging into this hidden history, make sure you subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss our next video. And let us know in the comments what other historical myths you think we should tackle.